So today, we're going to do something a little different. We're opening a time capsule. Not one you'd find buried in the ground, but one that was printed on paper, bound in black, and just filled with the ghost of a future that never came to be. This is the Soviet Encyclopedia of Cybernetics. Okay, so picture this. It's 1973. We're deep in the Cold War, and a group of scientists in the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic publishes this absolute monster of a book. And this wasn't just some collection of facts. No. This was a statement of intent. It was basically a manual for building a completely new, rationally managed world. But what kind of world were they actually trying to build? What did they think was even possible with the tech they had? Well, that's exactly the question we're going to dive into today by flipping through the pages of this incredible document. You really have to think of this book as an artifact from a different timeline, you know? It's a relic from a Soviet tomorrow, one that was imagined with the tools of their yesterday. The entire project, this whole massive vision, it was all built on one powerful, all-encompassing idea: cybernetics. But, and this is the key, what they meant by cybernetics was way more ambitious than how we might think of it today. To them, cybernetics was the universal key. The idea was that the same fundamental laws that govern a simple thermostat could, if you were smart enough, be scaled up to manage a factory, an entire economy, or even society itself. It was the ultimate science of systems, of feedback, and of total top-down control. And the sheer scope here is it's breathtaking. They saw absolutely everything through the lens of cybernetics. They were using it from mathematical economics to plan the whole state, for queuing theory to manage resources, and even from medical electronics to understand the human body as just another complex system. They were trying to model human thought itself and perfect the way people and machines work together. It was their grand unified theory for, well, everything. So you have to get this. The goal here wasn't just about building better computers. It was about using those computers to build a perfectly optimized, predictable, and centrally managed reality. I mean, what an immense, staggering goal. Okay, but a vision that huge needs some serious hardware to back it up, right? And the machines they had to work with, they were absolute behemoths, true marvels of a completely different technological age. So, say hello to the M20. This was one of the workhorses of their cybernetic dream. And forget sleek silicon chips and touchscreens. We're talking humming cabinets, massive reels of magnetic tape, and stacks of punch cards. These machines were the physical heart of the whole operation. And to really get a sense of the mountain they were trying to climb, you just have to look at the numbers. The M220, which came after the M20, could do about 20,000 operations per second. Your smartphone? It's doing over 100 billion. It's not even in the same universe. The M220's memory was a little over 1,000 words. Not kilobytes, not megabytes, words. We carry gigabytes in our pockets. They had an entire room of equipment to do a tiny fraction of what fits in the palm of your hand. And this wasn't some one-off prototype either. It was an entire ecosystem of computers, like the Minsk 32 you see here. These things were networked, so to speak, across the entire Eastern Bloc. Each one was a giant mechanical brain in this massive, interconnected system. And just to give you a feel for how physical these machines were, a single M220 computer needed over 4,500 of these things, vacuum tubes. Can you just imagine the noise, the immense heat pouring off of this thing, the constant maintenance? It was an engineering reality that is it's almost alien to us today. All right, so they've got these incredible, room-sized monsters. But what was the master plan? What were they actually trying to calculate with them? Well, they were literally trying to model an entirely new reality. These diagrams from the encyclopedia, they might look super abstract, right? But these are basically blueprints for total management. On the left, you've got a model for a mass servicing system. You can think of that as logistics, supply chains, managing the flow of, well, anything. And on the right, that's a block diagram for a man-machine system. They were trying to mathematically define the perfect interaction between a human operator and an automated process. And at the highest level, this was the ultimate endgame. This quote from their entry on macroeconomic models really says it all. They weren't just trying to understand the economy. They were trying to calculate the single best path forward for an entire nation. And believe me, their ambition did not stop with the economy. The encyclopedia is full of entries on machine translation decades before it was a real thing we could all use. And they were developing these complex mathematical models of neurons in the human nervous system, basically trying to crack the code of the ultimate control system, the human brain itself. Now, it's really easy to just look back at all this and kind of write it off as a failed experiment, a forgotten future. But if you look a little closer, you start to see its echoes, its ghosts, everywhere in the code in the systems that we use every single day. The parallels to our world today are, honestly, they're kind of spooky. Their big dream of automated economic planning, well, what is that if not the granddaddy of all the algorithmic trading and big data analytics that run our markets? Their early work on machine translation, that laid the groundwork for the apps we all use constantly. And their theories on man-machine systems, that's basically the ancient ancestor of artificial intelligence and the entire field of user experience design. So here's the big takeaway. They were wrestling with the exact same problems we are today. How do you optimize a super complex system? How do you get a machine to understand human language? How do you make humans and computers work together seamlessly? The problems are identical. The tools we have are obviously worlds apart. And of course, the whole political ideology driving it couldn't be more different. In the end, their top-down, hyper-centralized vision, it just couldn't keep up. It was too rigid, too slow, and it pretty much collapsed under its own weight. But here's the thing. As we build our own increasingly complex, automated, and data-driven world, maybe there are lessons in this ghost of a future. What happens when our ambition to build these systems outpaces our wisdom to actually control them? It's a question they were asking back in 1973, and it's a question we are still struggling to answer today.